Did you know that foreign investors are quietly funding lawsuits in American courts through a practice called third-party litigation funding? Shadowy overseas funders are paying to sue American companies in our courts, and they don't pay a dime in U.S. taxes if there is an award or settlement. They profit tax-free from our legal system, while U.S. companies are tied up in court, and American families pay the price, to the tune of $5,000 a year. But there is a solution. A new proposal before Congress would close this loophole and ensure these foreign investors pay taxes, just like the actual plaintiffs have to. It's a common-sense move that discourages frivolous and abusive lawsuits and redirects resources back into American jobs, innovation, and growth. Only President Trump and congressional Republicans can deliver this win for America and hold these foreign investors accountable. Contact your lawmakers today and demand they take a stand to end foreign-funded litigation abuse.
What if I told you that right now, millions of people are living with a debilitating condition that's so misunderstood, many of them don't even know that they have it? That condition is obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD. I'm Dr. Patrick McGrath, the Chief Clinical Officer of NoCD. And in the 25 years I've been treating OCD, I've met so many people who are suffering from the condition in silence, unaware of just what it was. OCD can create overwhelming anxiety and fear around what you value most, make you question your identity, beliefs, and morals, and drive you to perform mentally and physically draining compulsions or rituals. Over my career, I've seen just how devastating OCD can be when it's left untreated. But help is available. That's where NoCD comes in. NoCD is the world's largest virtual therapy provider for obsessive-compulsive disorder. Our licensed therapists are trained in exposure and response prevention therapy, a specialized treatment proven to be incredibly effective for OCD. So visit nocd.com to schedule a free 15-minute call with our team. That's nocd.com.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Did you go the beef or the chicken?
Eavesdroppin.
Oh, there's Michelle sitting pretty. Hello.
Without having run a brush through the hair, so I appreciate the compliment.
Oh, hello everybody. It's Michelle and Geordie. I'm Geordie.
And I'm Michelle. This is Eavesdroppin, the comedy podcast, and you're an eavesdropper. Dropping in.
This is one time that you are allowed. Not just the one time, it's every time. Every time, every week.
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday of your life and ours. We give it. You take it.
You take it and you share. Because we've been getting lots of messages on the old email and on the Patreon. It's going ping, ping, ping.
That Patreon is blowing up, babe.
I know. Kiss Apocalypse has...
Say it again, Michelle.
Kissy, kissy. He's resurfaced. He's been sending us messages. More on that in upcoming episodes.
Oh.
Ow.
I love it when you tease them. And me, Michelle.
Speaking of previous episodes, I will say on the Patreon, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, get with it, guys. We've got a Patreon. Get on there. Support us.
Support us. You can go across. You can maybe pop a coin in the slot. Even, I think, a one-off. And you get a little access to something. I don't know. Michelle runs that side of things. I don't know what you get. What do you get, Michelle?
Oh, I don't know anymore.
Who knows?
I don't know. I just stick stuff on there. And one of the things I put on there was a link to Stella Street.
I watched it this morning. Yes, wonderful.
Oh, did you see that link I put up?
I did, yes. Because my favourite is the corner shop of Mick and Keith. I think their Mick and Keith is the best. The rest is a bit ropey. But Mick and Keith from the Rolling Stones running the corner shop in Surbiton, the best.
I didn't get that far. I only saw part of it with Michael Caine. Yeah, come on, girl. Loved it. So all over on the Patreon, that's what we have.
And we have all the links to all the previous episodes that we've done, and we are keeping a record of all of the television recommendations that have ever been mentioned. They're on there should you be lacking in something to watch on TV. And just before we move out of Patreon news, just to remind you that we are a weekly comedy storytelling podcast featuring me, Geordie and Michelle, and it's things like real life, true crime, and supernatural, in case you're here for the first time.
Actually, put under that broad category, Guardian Angels. And if you heard our episodes a couple of weeks ago, we've had a lot of feedback on that. A lot of feedback.
Laura.
People loved it.
A lot of people have that feeling of being watched, don't they? And whether they're spiritual or not, a lot of people kind of can see things rather than hear things that aren't there. They might see things like our friend of the podcast, Serena Bobowski, who sent that beautiful message, who saw things that reminded her regularly that her sister was still with her.
Yes. Speaking of sisters, I got something from mine about a guardian angel.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay, well, let's whack it in here and let everybody hear.
Hi, Michelle and Geordie. It's Eavesdroppin Steph. I just wanted to drop you guys a line because I wanted to tell you about something that happened to me this week after listening to your Guardian Angel episode. Call it coincidence or call it touched by a power of the Guardian Angel. I don't know, but what happened was I'm in the process of looking for a home. I have just recently sold one, and there's a house that I really loved. As soon as I went into this home, and I've seen it twice now, I just knew that this house was for us and I loved it. I got a call last Sunday from the real estate agent saying, we've had a fantastic offer on the house. The owners or the vendors are going to accept it. I know you're really interested in this property. I'm calling you because you need to make a first and final offer, and whoever has provided the highest offer, the house is going to go to them. Today's your day. So feeling a little bit on the spot, I spoke to my partner and I called him back and I made an offer. And within 5 minutes, he called me back and said, sorry, you don't have the house. So after feeling a little bit deflated and also a little bit nervous because I need to find a home fairly soon, I went to work the following day. So this is Monday, that's just been, and I was on the train and I put your episode on, and I remembered that I had in my handbag this clear stone, and it's been in my handbag forever, and it has a guardian angel inside of it. I bought it about 2 years ago when I was with my mum. And we went to this village in Canberra and we went to this esoteric store, and we wanted to actually get a reading that day, but we weren't able to. So we decided to buy some lucky stones instead. And this was part of my lucky stones. Anyway, as I was listening to your podcast, I found the stone in my bag and I had it in my hand, and I had it the whole way to work, and it was for the whole of your episode. And about an hour after I was at work, I received a phone call, and I received it from the same agent, but this time there was panic in his voice, pure panic. And I said to him, hi, why are you ringing me? Has something happened? And he said, yes. So what had occurred was the other party who'd made the higher offer actually had a home that they needed to sell first before they could purchase the house that we both liked. But their home was actually in a flood zone, so they needed a bit of extra time to fix it up, put it on the market, and then sell it. The vendors for the property were a little bit upset by that because the home forms part of a deceased estate. Long story short, basically, the vendors accepted my lower offer because financially it was better for them to take my offer because I could move into the home within 5 weeks, and then they would avoid any financial loss. It all happened so quickly and I still can't believe it, but I'm so excited. I move in 5 weeks. It's my beautiful dream home. We're all really happy. And I have to say, I think I did have a little angel looking over my shoulder that day. I don't know what you guys think, but I just thought I would share. All right. Love you guys. Love the show. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, Eavesdropper Steph. You might know her as the lover of Celine Dion.
Celine Dion lover. Lover of Celine. That's amazing. Well done, Steph. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of an extra push from us to get the guardian angel to wake up and smell the coffee, so to speak.
Yes, and for us to see the signs and to remember that they are out there looking over us, guiding us, and sometimes getting us the house of our dreams.
Michelle, speaking of our listeners, you know those celeb stories are coming in thick and fast. I finally remembered that good one that I wanted to tell you a few weeks ago and I completely forgot. It was only the most wonderful day of my life, and apart from the day that I spent with Adamant. But I'm a big fan of Rick Mail, right? Anyone who knew me at high school would know that I used to know all the Young Ones episodes off by heart. Yeah. And when Rick Mail and Ben Elton toured Australia when I was a teenager in, I think, 1985 or 6, I was about 14, 15, 16, that kind of age. Probably more like 15, I'd say. There was a show in Canberra. I didn't live in Canberra at the time. We lived down at the coast. My friend, very controversially, had an older boyfriend who was also the photographer for our local paper. So he and her, me and a few other older people, drove to Canberra one night, up and back in a night, and went to the Canberra Theatre to watch this show. It was fantastic. I loved it. But afterwards, I insisted that we hang around the backstage area. No one was there, just us. And eventually Rick and Ben came out and we spent some time with them. Then a bunch of other girls arrived and it was a big free-for-all, and we had lots of photos that were all in the local paper.
Of course, because you were with the local photographer.
Exactly. My hair, though, it was appalling. It was that kind of veranda of matted hair, like a cockatoo, back-combed. Oh. And there's pictures of me and Rick together doing the Rick face. I spent a long time with Rick and with Ben. Rick was the one who told me that my name, Geordie, at the time a new nickname for me, actually meant the name for Newcastle people. Ben Elton, and I'll never forget this, Ben, if you're listening, he's not, said to me, if I'm an actress and if I'm living in London when I'm older, he'd give me a job. Well, that never happened. I did go to drama school, drama classes, but never became an actress, really.
Yeah, but why don't you just ring him up and hit him up?
I don't know if he's even working anymore.
You've got to hit up those contacts.
Hi, remember me? He won't remember.
Hi, I was that girl from Australia.
You'll know me by the giant fringe that stood right up in the air.
Just trying to think what haircut I had around that time. I think I had the triangular bob.
Okay.
Which was with shaved under, kind of like a short one.
Like a monk. Like a Lego head.
Kind of a bit Lego head. It was considered quite cool, I would say, at the time.
That's ridiculous.
But looking back, disaster. The undercut is what they called it.
Well, listen, I've got an even better story here about a celeb. It's from a friend of mine who was the lead singer in 90s British indie rock band The Faith Healers on Pure Records. If you know of them, some people might love them and know them. This story features one of my hall passes. So I really want to play Roxanne's story of when The Faith Healers played in America. I think it's New York. Have a listen.
When I was a mere lass, when I was in a band called The Faith Healers, yes, I happened to be in a bar in New York, and the woman, oh God, what was her name? I can't remember. It was a woman from Elektra, the label we were signed to, in New York, in America.
Your New York label.
Yes. And
label.
Matt Dillon walked in to the bar with Jay Mascis from Dinosaur Jr.
Right.
And I just went, oh my God, it's Matt Dillon. Jesus Christ. Yes, as you would.
Do you fancy?
And she was like, hey, come on, I'll introduce you to him. And I was like, what, do you know him? She was like, no, but it doesn't matter. I'll introduce you to him. And being the very British kind of 20-year-old or however old I was at the time, I was just like, oh my God, no. And she was like literally trying to drag me over to him. And it was like, what would you say? We hung out in the same bar, but without meeting each other. Yes. And then the next day, me and whoever it was from the band, we had to go and do interviews. We were in some other bar or restaurant or whatever with the woman from the record label and whatever magazine was interviewing us. And so she was just like, so you'll never guess what? Roxanne and Matt Dillon. They got it on last night. They were just like the couple, you know, and then it was in print.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You and Matt Dillon had a
Matt Dillon had a fake relationship.
I love that. Lucky you. Did he know?
Well, I hope so. You know, lucky guy. That's all I can say.
Absolutely, he would have been a lucky guy.
How exciting is that?
Oh my God.
I mean, she's hot stuff, old Roxy. And I think she's had quite a lot of run-ins with a lot of well-known people. All those lovely rock stories from days gone by are always lots of fun, aren't they?
I'm not sure if I ever told you my celeb spot at LA airport.
Who was it?
I'd been on a surf trip for one of the magazines. I'd been sent out to LA to write the story. I had my wetsuit. It was still wet.
Ugh.
I know, and it was gross. And I thought, I've got to just find a quiet little corner of LAX airport and just take my wetsuit and fling it in some kind of shitty plastic bag and stuff it into my suitcase. So I found this palm tree in the corner of nowhere in a very quiet part of the airport. Went behind there and started unzipping my bag. Looked up, also hiding behind this palm tree was Ed Sheeran.
Oh.
And I went, "Hi, you're Ed Sheeran." And he's like, yeah. And I said, "We have a friend in common," because his business manager was my old manager. We just hit it off, chit-chatting away. He was lovely. And we were both on the same flight, but he was in first.
Yes, so you didn't keep going up saying, "Hi, Ed, how's the chicken? Did you go the beef or the chicken?"
Really, like about 10 minutes later, I get a text from my manager. "Hi, just heard you met Ed." So he'd obviously texted about me, and it was really cool. He was very nice. So if anyone else has a celeb story they want to share, do write in. Send us a voice note.
Yeah, do send all the voice notes because they will be played. And if you don't want us to play them, then just tell us, read it out, please. Thanks for the contributions. Michelle.
Geordie.
This week, it's real life, mate. Real life.
It is. It's one of your favourite topics.
Real life to me means a cult. But is this a cult? Or is it a cult in disguise? You be the judge. I'm going to tell you about the Red House.
Can I just say I just painted my house red?
Well, maybe you want to change that to aubergine after you hear this story.
Shit. Okay.
But just as an aside and a segue, I'm currently looking at Steiner schools for one of my children. And if you haven't heard of them, they're the type of schools where kids wear natural fibres, they climb trees. It's also famed for being an anti-screen kind of environment until they're 15, which I think is actually probably a good idea. But I find the idea of them magical, and I'm hoping for barefoot kids whittling sticks with soft lighting and no plastic, and everyone calm and thoughtful playing a flute with one leg cocked. It just might be what we're looking for. But then I mentioned it to a couple of people. They all have a story, Michelle, often negative, about Waldorf Steiner schools.
Doesn't sound like they're going to be raving about it from the tone of your voice.
Well, some think that these schools are a bit culty or anti-vaxxy. So I wonder, is it as wholesome as I imagine, or is it just a lifestyle trap? Like, is it 1 minute felted gnomes and the next you're in a robe offering, sacrifices to the altar of Rudolf Steiner? After some investor Googling, I discovered that Steiner education is based on a spiritual philosophy called anthroposophy, and it's developed by Austrian Rudolf Steiner in the early 20th century. It mixes science, spirituality, reincarnation, a belief in cosmic rhythms, which I wonder, is that ecstatic dance? Dance like no one's watching? What's that?
Cosmic rhythms.
Cosmic rhythms. It's probably to do with the ebb and flow of the natural way of things, I suppose.
Well, maybe it's that whole thing. I don't know much about Steiner schools, but cosmic rhythms, is it that whole thing of, I want to sleep now, so you just do?
So you just sleep, and it might be 1 p.m.
I don't want to do reading today. I just want to pick flowers. Okay. I think it's, maybe
perhaps.
It's that whole, you just follow your voice, follow your
intuitive.
Follow your arrow.
Some people love it. They say it's holistic, creative, and respects childhood, which is what I want. Others say it's dogmatic, secretive, and outdated, and teachers are trained in a very specific worldview, which I suppose is quite controversial, let's just say. One thing I have noticed, though, is how badly it does at Ofsted, all of the good schools, and you have to pay for them as well. So maybe it's a little Hogwarts with a side of Scientology, which is interesting that I say that because the first school I looked at was in a village near the UK headquarters of Scientology.
Okay.
But they're not linked. They are not linked. I will absolutely say that.
I'm not surprised Steiner schools don't do well because they don't teach kids how to read and write and do maths. They encourage kids to just...
They do teach them those things. It's not true. They do teach them those things. They start later to learn to read, and they spend longer on subjects like maths and science, which is exactly what I think my child needs.
Okay.
They go in deep, and they don't just dip in, dip out. They go in deep, and they go behind the reasons why it's good to know these things. I mean, that's what I've learned so far in my research.
You probably know more than me because I'm just probably basing my opinion of Steiner schools on the bad press. And there's always bad press about these schools every now and again.
Well, not every Steiner school is the same. Some are super relaxed and modern, and others stick more rigidly to Steiner's original beliefs. But there have been controversies, particularly over vaccine policies, radical ideas in the original teachings, and you guessed it, culty vibes, which got me thinking, what happens when alternative education really goes off the rails? Like, not just a little bit mystical, but full-blown institutional horror.
Oh my God.
And that's when I stumbled across the story of the Red House.
Okay.
This school was located in Buxton, Norfolk. The school was presented as a progressive communal environment for troubled youth. It was a big red brick building in the middle of nowhere. In fact, it was almost entirely cut off, and it was operated by the Danish organisation Tvind and was one of many such schools across Europe.
So it's basically juvie but a school.
Pretty much.
Right.
Well, not so much juvie. It's more like, oh, this person's not getting on in mainstream schools. They're disruptive. They're troubled. They come from troubled background. This is going to teach them how to get on in life. They will be boarding there. The local authority sends those children there, and they are supposed to be cared for holistically throughout, but also taught manual labor and things like that, jobs for life, that kind of thing. Beneath the surface, though, it was a place where discipline was masking abuse and communal living was concealing control. So it wasn't as great as it said on their leaflets. Former residents describe a regime of public shaming, physical punishment, and psychological manipulation. And I'm going to say right now, there's going to be some trigger warnings throughout this story because it gets dark. Trigger, warning, warning, trigger, warning.
Look out!
Trigger,
Oh my goodness.
warning.
Brace yourself, Mavis.
The staff behaved less like caregivers, Michelle, and more like enforcers of a strict, oppressive system. So far, so boarding school, right? That does sound quite familiar. Those of us in the world who have been to boarding school, not me, but my husband
Not
has.
me. I've had friends at boarding school. No one liked it.
No. And there's such a thing as boarding school syndrome, actually, which I'll talk about another time. But more than 40 former pupils have come forward with allegations of physical and sexual abuse they say they faced at the home. And these accounts include public humiliation, forced labour, and isolation. And one survivor reported being locked in a room for days as punishment, while another spoke of being forced to perform physically demanding tasks beyond their capabilities. Remember, they are children.
Yeah, this is sounding horrible.
Kyle, not his real name, lived at the Red House from the age of 14 and he's now a security worker in his mid-40s. Kyle recalls a brutal attack by fellow students that was ordered by a teacher. And he says,
What?
They gave me the beating of my life. He said the teacher came in with 2 or 3 students and said, go get him. I had broken ribs, a cracked jaw, and black eyes.
That is outrageous. That's not cool for a teacher to do that. That's upsetting me.
Yes, it's very upsetting. And what's worse, Michelle, is that as he left the room, the teacher turned to Kyle and said, you deserve that.
I'm fucking triggered by this, Geordie.
It's heartbreaking. I'm sorry if you're triggered. I'm sorry, everybody. So Kyle came from a family with addiction problems. And like I said, he was only 14 when he arrived at the Red House. A brochure shown to him by his social worker promised the opportunity for children who had suffered abuse and neglect at home to start afresh with sailing and horse riding, as well as building friendships with teachers. Yep. After his arrival, he says the reality of his new home became shockingly clear from the get-go. As well as being a home, the Red House was supposed to offer children an education focused on manual work, like I said. And Kyle had dreams of becoming an architect when he was older, but this dream was quickly shattered. He recalls children being used as slave labour to maintain the school's facilities, including building the shower blocks, bricklaying and painting. Sounds a bit like the slave labour you're forced to do when you go to Sweden, by the way, Michelle. Sounds like your life right now.
I love doing all the slave labour. I love it. It keeps me fit because I've been eating 50 fucking fikas a day. It's just all cake while you're here and buns.
Well, you'll need the energy by the sound of it. Cake and buns.
But those poor kids, they're not getting cinnamon buns. They're just getting probably the cane as well.
Well, when he left the home, Kyle was unable to read and write, so he wasn't really getting a well-rounded education at all, just being abused further and put to work. Hundreds of children in care across the UK were sent to the Red House between 1984 and 1998. And Kyle is one of 43 former students who are now in the process of taking legal action for the physical, sexual and psychological abuse they allegedly experienced at the time. And there are 60 more victims from the Red House who are still reluctant to come forward, they say.
I bet you there's more who will never speak out. God, this is a really shocking story.
It's horrible. I know. I'm really sorry. Happy day. Another former resident who did speak out, though, was Hayley. She was 13 when she was sent to the Red House, and Sky did a mini deep dive on this, Sky News, which is where I got most of my information. I will send you the link if you'd like to see them speaking in this video. Hayley describes to Sky the way staff used to violently restrain pupils, with multiple people pinning her to the floor on one occasion. She said she thought she was going to die because she couldn't breathe.
This is terrible. These are children.
Absolutely. Students at the Red House would often be sent abroad for months as well on work trips, travelling in old buses, which just makes me think of the Manson family.
God. What were they doing abroad?
They were working and doing work exchanges, and because I said before, they were across Europe, these schools, but these guys would go out to India, for example, which is where Hayley was one time when she alleges she was sexually assaulted. She remembers being woken up, trigger warning please guys, whilst being raped.
Oh my God.
She said she tried to find a teacher, but they told her to go back to bed and said she was lying.
Oh, this poor girl.
Well, she said that sort of sexual assault happened multiple times while at the Red House. Then there's Stephen, who's now 50 from Newcastle, also claims to have experienced physical and sexual abuse while at the home. He was orphaned at a young age, then placed in multiple children's homes before arriving at the Red House aged 12. It's so sad. Pushed from pillar to post, and then he arrives. He says he was molested and he's now unable to work due to complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a direct result of the abuse he suffered at the Red House.
Can you imagine? They rock up and they're like, where's the horse riding? And then they get this.
Instead, they get regular beatings from the headmaster, which is what happened to Stephen. And he said that if children wet the bed, they were forced to wear a nappy and run around with a toilet seat above their head in full view of everyone. I mean, if this isn't a cult run by some cruel, power-hungry bastard, I don't know what is. We've heard things like this in other cults that we've explored, but this is actually backed by the council, backed by the government. Council's paying the money to run this show.
But is it a cult or is it just money hungry?
It's a hidden cult, if you ask me.
Evil people who are like what the church did when they were taking babies, and priests who are fiddly diddling with children. Like, to me, it's one and the same.
Hidden in plain sight. Well, in 1999, the children at the Red House tried to raise the alarm about what was actually happening at the school. So they staged a riot. They broke windows, they damaged the buildings. But instead of coming to help them, police officers arrived and arrested people like Stephen and 17 other pupils, charging them with violent disorder and criminal damage.
They've got a reputation for being troubled teens in a place that's meant to be...
The law's not on their side.
No, the law is thinking these are delinquents who are causing further trouble. So they didn't stand a chance, really.
Well, there were inspections by regulatory bodies and concerns were raised about the Red House. In fact, in 1990, the Social Services Inspectorate wrote to directors of local authorities, those authorities who had been sending their troubled kids to the Red House, warning them against doing that. Don't send any more kids to the home, they said. By 1995, there were 23 claims of physical or sexual abuse by teachers or volunteer teachers reported between 1989 and 1993. Yet still, Norfolk County Council continued to allow children to be sent to the Red House.
Right. Well, where else are they going to send these kids? They're just doing what's easy to get cases off their books.
Probably. And I just want to say that it wasn't Norfolk County Council sending children there. It was local authorities around the country, but Norfolk County Council was not stopping it.
Yeah.
And the report listed allegations including sexual assault by a teacher from Denmark, physical abuse by teachers, and a gang rape by 3 pupils. I'm so sorry if this is triggering, guys. It's really hard, especially when you think about this happening to young people.
Yeah, it's terrible.
By 1996, the Charity Commission began an inquiry into the home over concerns that funds from the home that were meant for the charity were instead being siphoned off to private businesses and Tvind's leaders. If you remember, I already told you about it being run by a Danish school cooperative called Tvind.
Yeah.
This is actually quite a controversial group founded in the late 60s by a left-wing teacher called Mogens Amte Petersen. And he was your typical long-haired hippie guru, and he attracted followers with his visions of how they could change the world with his ideas of alternative education. So Tvind opened with around 30 radical schools in Denmark, mostly for disadvantaged children, and 2 in England, which was the Red House in Norfolk and the small school in East Yorkshire. Now, I'm all about this alternative education, but it's worrying how unregulated it could be, especially when it's coming in from Europe or somewhere else.
Yeah.
Local authorities could pay Tvind up to $4,000 per month for the education, care and welfare of each child. And teachers were also, listen to this bit, this is where it gets culty, teachers are also expected to donate their salary to the organisation and live communally. So were the teachers the cult members?
Donate their salary?
To the organisation Tvind, who they were essentially working for, and live communally at the small school, at the Red House, at the other schools. All
Who the fuck is doing that? I'm not giving up my money to teach these little bastards. Like, come on, that is a cult.
You're ruling like some sort of Borstal and it becomes Lord of the Flies.
Oh, that sounds terrible.
Because they're giving away their money. They're living under this Tvind regime, if you like.
This is ridiculous. They're not getting top talent if they're not allowed to keep their salaries.
Absolutely not. An associate professor from Copenhagen University called Jess Fabricius Muller, who's written a book about the organisation, and he says of Tvind that they objected to learning from books. So they're not doing mainstream education, which is obvious. They're an alternative school, but there's no actual academic learning whatsoever, even if it's holistic. Right. And I should point out that most of Tvind schools in Denmark have been closed down, but there were no allegations coming out of Denmark about their schools, such as the Red House. That was the one that really stood out for the wrong reasons, with its environment of fear and obedience.
Maybe there were some tougher regulations or more eyes on the education institutions in the home country of Denmark. Who knows?
Who knows? But over time, Tvind expanded into a network of schools and humanitarian organizations, and some former students and employees have described the organization and its controlling body, called the Teachers Group, as a political cult.
Oh.
They say the structure was hierarchical, strictly adhering to the group's ideology. Dissent was not tolerated, and members were expected to conform entirely to the organization's belief and practices.
Right.
Hence, the teachers gave up their pay, had to live in the commune.
Yeah, you're right. This element of your story sounds culty, for sure.
Yes, and the Red House is a direct arm of Tvind, underneath the Teachers Group. Tvind's operations extended beyond education. Investigations have actually suggested the presence of an extensive money laundering network within the group, which are donating charitable funds to private businesses and private individuals, including several of the group's leaders.
Of course, backhanders.
So they're backhanding it. In 2001, the Danish authorities raided the Teachers Group offices and charged the leader, that old hippie I was talking about, Peterson, with fraud, but he was found not guilty in 2006. Then he and some of his associates skipped out of the country, but prosecutors appealed, and now the group are wanted by Interpol.
Yep, good.
In 2013, several of the senior members of Tvind were sentenced in absentia to prison in Denmark for suspected tax evasion and embezzlement.
Right, so they can never go back, probably.
Well, they're all holed up in a massive refuge in a luxury compound in Mexico, worth about 20 mil on the Pacific coast, having a fine time by the sound of it.
Clinking those cocktail glasses.
And meanwhile, the survivors of the Red House have initiated legal action against Norfolk County Council and the local authorities that placed them in the home. They allege negligence, sexual abuse, physical assault, false imprisonment, torture, starvation and neglect. It's pretty hefty, these allegations.
That is shocking.
Yeah. They're being represented by Imran Khan and partners, and Daniel Lemberger Cooper, who is working for the group in representing them, says that there was opportunity after opportunity for the authorities to stop the abuse, but it was shockingly allowed to carry on. So I want to ask Michelle, was the Red House a cult or just a case of widespread institutional abuse? Why were so many abusive systems cloaked in progressive language, and Where were the regulators? These questions need answers, not just for the sake of history, but also to prevent these things from happening again.
What do you think?
I would say, looking at the background of Tvind and the fact that the leaders of the teachers group are all on the run in a massive fancy compound, I'd say it's a fucking cult or some sort of underhanded misuse of power.
I think it's both. I think it's definitely institutionalized bullying and violence and
taking advantage of people who are you're more powerful than.
But it was also to line their pockets. It was kind of a trickle down of what is essentially a cult.
It reminds us of how institutions can fail the very people they're meant to protect. And more than that, Michelle, it's a testament to the resilience of the survivors who, despite their trauma, are now coming forward to seek justice and make sure that their voices are heard. So for them, I give full support and I wish them the best.
Yeah, of course. And hopefully they can get some kind of closure.
Closure is needed. Validation is needed. Yeah.
And money, because
that would help.
A lot of these people can't work.
Yeah.
They're so traumatized.
Yeah. I would say those local authorities and the council, Norfolk County Council, need to step in and offer services that they're offering to other people for them because they weren't being looked after when they needed to be.
Okay. Well, thanks for that.
Devastating, sorry.
Horrible story. Oh my God.
We got a bit bleak. We got a bit dumb. We're two birds yakking, just having a laugh.
This summer, Instacart is bringing back your favorites from 1999 with prices from 1999. That means 90s prices on juice pouches that ought to be respected, 90s prices on box mac and cheese, and 90s prices on ham, cheese, and cracker lunches. Enjoy all those throwbacks and more at throwback prices, only through Instacart. $4.72 maximum discount per $10 of eligible items. Limit 3 offers per order. Expires September 5th while supplies last. Discount based on CPI comparison.
Did you know that foreign investors are quietly funding lawsuits in American courts through a practice called third-party litigation funding? Shadowy overseas funders are paying to sue American companies in our courts, and they don't pay a dime in U.S. taxes if there is an award or settlement. They profit tax-free from our legal system, while U.S. companies are tied up in court and American families pay the price, to the tune of $5,000 a year. But there is a solution. A new proposal before Congress would close this loophole and ensure these foreign investors pay taxes, just like the actual plaintiffs have to. It's a common-sense move that discourages frivolous and abusive lawsuits and redirects resources back into American jobs, innovation, and growth. Only President Trump and congressional Republicans can deliver this win for America and hold these foreign investors accountable. Contact your lawmakers today and demand they take a stand to end foreign-funded litigation abuse.
Well, I've kind of got something that is a little bit involving children as well. So, trigger warning.
Get those triggers out. Bang, bang, bang.
I know this one's not an easy listen either.
Great.
So I'd actually never heard of this cult, but it's a really shitty one. And it's based in New Zealand. New Zealand.
How is it that there's still cults? We say this every time. How are there still cults that we don't know about?
Because there are a dime a bloody dozen. There are so many. I mean, it is the topic that just keeps giving.
Yep.
I say that in a flippant way, but it's fucking terrible for the people who are in it.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. And do you know what? It reminds me a bit of social media and influencers. Somebody suddenly made money being an influencer. Somebody else sees it and thinks, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
And off they trot.
Well, speaking of that, did you hear about that vegan raw food influencer who died of starvation?
What? No.
She was a Russian influencer on social media, and yeah, a couple of days before she died of starvation, and she looked fucking skinny and sick.
Oh God.
She's like eating some kind of papaya or whatever, and yeah, she didn't make it. It's terrible.
Oh my God.
But anyway, back to this bloody cult. It's from New Zealand. It's a New Zealand cult.
Well done, New Zealand. You've produced yet another good thing. Split ends and this cult. Oh, and Flight of the Conchords. And Taika Waititi, or whatever his name is. Taika Waititi. How do you say his name? Taika Waititi.
What about the guy is this the guy? Your guy?
No, my guy. Oh, Antonio Temayaha, of course, yes.
Pin that because there's a new photo coming on Patreon. You got to sign up if you want to see that.
A new photo of
You've
me and
got some
Anthony.
great hair on in that pic. I've been waiting for a
God.
moment to share that one. Anyway, there it is.
Oh, geez.
Boom. But look, New Zealand can't take all the rap for this because actually founded by an Australian guy.
You bastard.
Dickhead. This one, it's called Gloriavale.
I've never heard of it. No.
Oh, man. Okay, look, there are all these documentaries. And last year there was a 3-part documentary released about this cult called Escaping Utopia. Heads up, did not watch it.
As always.
Didn't have time and no internet here. I'm lucky I'm even recording today. By all accounts, it is harrowing.
Oh, no.
I'll put links in the Patreon to the trailers.
There are a few of our patrons that do like a harrowing watch.
Yes. Oh, gosh. Well, this one is apparently really fucking hard going. And it looks at this cult/religious sect that was founded in 1969 by Aussie preacher Neville Cooper. Now, he had this vision to create a vision of heaven on earth by God. And this vision was to also create an isolated community, which he did in Haupiri, which is a remote part of New Zealand, I believe on the South Island. And this community was dedicated to living by God's word. And Geordie, like all good religious communities, it's a fucking cult. And worse than that, it runs on women's absolute subservience to men.
I don't like the sound of that.
It's fucking terrible. This whole thing goes up the chain where the men have absolute subservience to the leaders above them, who are called shepherds. And the shepherds have absolute allegiance to Neville Cooper, who, all these people have new names. His new name is Hopeful Christian.
It sounds so familiar. I feel like we've talked about other cults which are almost identical, but not, you know?
It's got a lot of similarities with other cults, and jump in if you get a feeling of it sounds like any particular cult, because there are elements, although I have to say they look like blue nuns, and I'm not talking about the box wine.
It was a bottle. A lovely
Was it a
blue
bottle?
nun. It was a lovely bottle with a nun on the front, yes.
Well, all the women have to wear the same outfit.
I also don't like the sound of that.
No.
I hate a uniform.
Oh, do you know what? I used to love it at school. I loved a uniform because you just didn't have to fucking think about what you're going to wear that day. It's a dark cult. It's not as dark as the ones where we've talked about sacrificing and murder and all that kind of stuff. But it is a proper religious community with very strict rules. Like girls and boys are not allowed to talk to each other after puberty.
Oh.
Women, they have to wear these blue and white dresses that look a little bit like Julie Andrews when she's wearing that wimple type hat in The Sound of Music and running. And you see this footage and they're kind of doing that. It's wild. And of course, New Zealand is stunning.
It's beautiful. I mean, I just saw it on Real Housewives of Sydney, actually, and it looks really nice. They went on a holiday. Obviously, it was a shit show, but the scenery was to die for.
Well, there's a video clip by Aldous Harding, which I will put on the Patreon, where you just see this absolutely stunning New Zealand landscape. And it is incredible. What a country. These women are all in these identical blue long dresses with white hats and scarves and whatever. They're not allowed to ever expose any skin except for their hands and face, because they are not allowed to inflame men's uncontrollable desires. They're married off as young as possible to older men.
No, I'm not into that.
That the leadership decide on. And they are expected to devote themselves to having as many babies as possible as quick as they can. And cook, and clean, and sew. So basically, you want to be a fucking man in this cult, if you're going to be in this cult. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here because I'm going to give you some details on this place. So like I said, I'm ashamed to say that Gloriavale was founded in 1969 by an Aussie, Neville Cooper. He was a preacher who had been invited to New Zealand, and he ended up shipping his own wife and kids there, where he started his own church in Rangiora near Christchurch on the South Island. He called it the Christian Church, but that didn't work out. So he started another church called the Springbank Christian Community, and this was more what he had in mind. They had a bit of money, so the church bought a farm, they built a school, they set up a church, an actual building. Then, smart people, they set up plumbing, drain laying, gas fitting, aircraft engineering, and motor mechanic businesses. They started doing waterbed manufacturing and cabinetry at the farm.
Well, kudos to their entrepreneurial skills and their societal structure. Amazing. Shame about the ideology.
Exactly. They also were doing agriculture too, like raising pigs and sheep, and they were growing crops. And the church provided food and accommodation for the congregation. And at this point, they also set up a point system for members to share wages and profits from the church businesses. So far, so good, right? Didn't stay like this.
No.
Neville Cooper, aka Hopeful Christian, that was when he decided he needed a bit more control. That's when he said all women must wear these long blue dresses. Look, everything was going great guns at the farm, but it was too small for all the expansion he had planned.
What was so appealing, do you think? What was so appealing to his flock? Why did they all come in droves? Because it was utopia style. Yeah.
It is everybody working towards this idealistic vision of...
And it did sound like that to begin with. Knock out a few waterbeds, sow a few seeds.
No one really has their own money. Everyone's working for the greater good. You're living off the land. You're living off your smarts. You're in your own community.
But one guy's the boss.
Yeah.
That's the only drawback, right?
You're raising your kids in a way that you feel is teaching them good moral values. You're all living by the word of God. If that's your bag, this place probably sounded incredible.
There just shouldn't be one guy that's the boss. There should be a few people, not just men.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is a fucking cult, so there's always a top dog, right? But this community, I mean, like you said, kudos to them. They did really well. And so well, they relocated to Haupiri out on the west coast of New Zealand, South Island, between 1991 and 95. There, they expanded into dairy farming, and from 1999, they built more accommodation, a commercial kitchen, a big mess hall, a school, a preschool. They had offices, a commercial laundry, plus they built new businesses. They had a deer farm, a pet food manufacturing plant, a helicopter servicing business, a hunting lodge, and they also started their own airline. I mean, this cult knew how to make the money, honey. But all the while, the women were cooking and cleaning and making babies and raising kids, while the men did all the supposed real work. And they all lived a fundamentalist Christian life, believing that they were living the true way to salvation and having faith in Jesus Christ and obedience to the commands of God. You know, they believed in creationism. Contraception was banned. Forget ever trying to have a divorce from the creepy old guy that you were forced to marry, whether you liked it or not.
Oh, God.
They were pumping out those babies. Female submission to males was compulsory. Birthdays were not celebrated. Anniversaries were not celebrated. Neither was Christmas or Easter. Children were not immunized. Men and boys were expected to keep their hair short. They all wore light blue shirts and dark blue pants. Like I said, the women had the long blue dresses. They had to cover their head with scarves. And if you're not born into Gloriavale, but you think this life sounds like it's just for you.
How'd you get in?
Well, you had to go through an initiation process known as submitting, which means abandoning your career. You're not allowed to have any opinions, no possessions, no contact with the outside world, abandoning all free will. You're basically a robot dedicated to God and Gloriavale.
Oh.
And once you live there, it's a secluded religious community with around 600 other people. But you're living in bunk rooms, whole families living in bunk rooms with 10 other families. Like, it's a dormitory.
Yeah, that doesn't sound appealing. It's like the worst holiday
It
ever.
sounds fucking terrible.
Like the worst YMCA holiday.
Oh my God.
Budget holiday ever.
You probably get some shitty little blanket and a, toilet with no door on it. But there's a doctrine they all live by, and it's a book called What We Believe. It's based on selected parts of the Bible. And the message here is there's only one path to salvation. It's total faith in Jesus and total obedience to the leaders of Gloriavale. On the surface, this all looks quite simple. To some people, I guess it sounds ideal. Families living in harmony. You're all sharing meals. A little bit like you asked me, why is this appealing?
Yeah.
Everyone's working on the land and cooking and cleaning and baking and all for the good of the collective. You kind of said it's a spiritual utopia. But when you dig a little deeper, there's this much darker picture that emerges with allegations, and here it comes, child sexual abuse, forced labor, oppressive religious control, manipulation, all the tactics that most cults use. While this idea of communal living might seem amazing to anyone looking to get out of this cycle of consumerism that we all live in and big city living, Gloriavale, like all the cults that we talk about, it gives people a sense of belonging, but it's in exchange for total control.
Right.
And that is, unless you're born into the cult, then it's kind of your own personal hell. And this is what happened to an ex-cult member called Virginia Courage. And like I told you, they just get given these crazy names. Hopeful Christian, Virginia Courage. So Virginia was born and raised inside of Gloriavale. She didn't know anything else except that way of life. Apparently, you are under constant pressure to give yourself fully to the community. You're raised to believe that you owe them. You owe them your life.
Wow.
So you always feel indebted to the community. And she's described in interviews and in documentaries how the Gloriavale founder, Hopeful Christian, would make people stand up and thank their parents for choosing Gloriavale.
Oh, gosh.
Like this salvation was a gift. But what they were really doing was programming the congregation in subtle ways of indoctrination. And it all came from the male elders, aka the shepherds, who were at the top of the hierarchy.
Right.
Below them are the men, and their job is to serve the shepherds and do what the shepherds say. And at the very, very bottom are the women. So Virginia and other Gloriavale escapees have spoken about a culture where women were basically silenced from birth. Your marriage was arranged, obedience was demanded, education was limited. Questioning the men was considered a rebellion against God. It was fucking serious, right?
That would not wash in my house.
No, or anywhere. Like all children born inside the cult, she was raised to believe that the community was the only true way to live, and that everything outside of Gloriavale was dangerous and godless, and you would go straight to hell. From the minute she was born, her life was set out before her. No choice in what she can wear, no education, or very, very little. She was told who she would marry, no autonomy over your body or your time or even your thoughts. They want to control everything. The kind of mantra was submit, serve, and stay silent.
The 3 S's, not shit, shower, shave.
No, it was terrible. Girls were just raised to see themselves as objects of obedience and chastity and domesticity, because that's all they were there for, was to become wives and push out as many babies as possible and work unpaid for the glory of God. And Geordie, like all cults, including the one you just talked about, there's dodgy sex stuff.
Yeah.
Trigger.
Did you know that foreign investors are quietly funding lawsuits in American courts through a practice called third-party litigation funding? Shadowy overseas funders are paying to sue American companies in our courts, and they don't pay a dime in U.S. taxes if there is an award or settlement. They profit tax-free from our legal system, while U.S. companies are tied up in court and American families pay the price, to the tune of $5,000 a year. But there is a solution. A new proposal before Congress would close this loophole and ensure these foreign investors pay taxes, just like the actual plaintiffs have to. It's a common sense move that discourages frivolous and abusive lawsuits and redirects resources back into American jobs, innovation, and growth. Only President Trump and congressional Republicans can deliver this win for America and hold these foreign investors accountable. Contact your lawmakers today and demand they take a stand to end foreign-funded litigation abuse.
What if I told you that right now, millions of people are living with a debilitating condition that's so misunderstood, many of them don't even know that they have it? That condition is obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. I'm Dr. Patrick McGrath, the Chief Clinical Officer of NoCD. And in the 25 years I've been treating OCD, I've met so many people who are suffering from the condition in silence, unaware of just what it was. OCD can create overwhelming anxiety and fear around what you value most, make you question your identity, beliefs, and morals, and drive you to perform mentally and physically draining compulsions or rituals. Over my career, I've seen just how devastating OCD can be when it's left untreated. But help is available. That's where NoCD comes in. NoCD is the world's largest virtual therapy provider for obsessive compulsive disorder. Our licensed therapists are trained in exposure and response prevention therapy, a specialized treatment proven to be incredibly effective for OCD. So visit nocd.com to schedule a free 15-minute call with our team. That's nocd.com.
So Gloriavale founder Neville Cooper, hopeful Christian, he was actually convicted of sexual assault in the 1990s. And Virginia has spoken out about being sexually abused as a child. A little bit like your story, she was abused in her own bed, in her own home. And she's spoken out about how Gloriavale didn't just fail to protect her, but they actively enable abusers. Because in Gloriavale, the shepherds teach the men that men's sexual urges are uncontrollable and that it's up to the women and girls to satisfy those urges and prevent temptation.
No.
So if a man sins, it's the woman's fault because they didn't satisfy them in time. There's also this fucked up theology of repentance and forgiveness. It's kind of a bit of a spiritual cover-up. So if you do something wrong and you repent, no matter what you've done, you're forgiven and the sin is wiped away. This includes rape and child abuse.
Oh my God.
Child sexual abuse, right? So you can ask for forgiveness and the child, the victim, and the community
have to
forgives you. They repent and then it's gone. It's washed away.
Oh my God.
It's a free-for-all, effectively. And in terms of sex, women were brought up to believe that to resist is a sin. Women in this cult are absolutely fucked, literally and figuratively.
I hate it.
It's terrible. Virginia grew up with more than a dozen siblings, which was pretty normal in Gloriavale because,
all
like
the babies.
Said, no contraception, motherhood's expected of you. And when she was a child, she was caring for other children. She was cleaning, she was cooking, she was doing laundry, all while being brainwashed into thinking that this was her divine purpose. Academic subjects for girls were minimized. They were not encouraged to have any kind of critical thinking or challenge the Gloriavale worldview. They were only trained in female duties. And like I said, the marriages were arranged by the shepherds. So young girls with older dudes. Once you're married, you just have to be sexually available to your husband at all times because saying no is not an option, right? So I don't know how, but somehow Virginia realized Gloria is a fucked up place.
Yes.
And she did eventually manage to escape. But, you know, the process of getting out of Gloriavale it's brutal because you were then cut off from your family. You're told you're going straight to hell. You lose everything, including your home, your community, and your identity, because she was born into that cult. Plus, she had to deal with all the trauma that she'd buried for years. And amazing for her, once she escaped, she spoke out. And her testimony about Gloriavale has been used in court cases against Gloriavale, particularly in the employment court, where she and some other escapees have alleged to slave-like conditions, which they describe as grueling workloads with no pay, brutal consequences for non-compliance, including physical punishment, food denial, and spiritual condemnation.
Oh, this is awful, Michelle.
Yeah, I know. Plus, in recent years, there have been a load of allegations from sexual abuse to modern slavery.
Right.
And between 2020 and 2022 alone, dozens of cases were brought against Gloriavale, many involving children and teachers at the Gloriavale school. And there are court documents that show at least 60 people have come forward to report harmful sexual behaviour.
16, did you say? 16?
60.
60. Oh my God.
That's 10% of that 600-person community. And they're just the ones who are speaking out.
Just the ones who feel that they're ready to speak out, of course.
And like I said earlier, the sexual abuse goes right back to the early 90s when Neville Cooper, hopeful Christian, was convicted of 11 charges of indecent assault.
Yuck.
He was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment. But unfortunately, the New Zealand Court of Appeal quashed these convictions, ordered a new trial, and in 1995 he was convicted on 3 counts of sexual abuse against young members of Gloriavale. It says members, and it makes me wonder if there are boys as well as girls. He was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment, but he was released on bail after just 11 months.
Why?
I don't know, but the thing is, Geordie, no one at Gloriavale knew anything about this because the shepherds withheld the information from the community and instead claimed that the outside world was persecuting Gloriavale and was spreading lies about hopeful Christian.
Right.
This cult is fucked
False
up.
news, yeah.
And the fact that he was allowed to go back and keep doing those same things and be forgiven by the congregation is heartbreaking for all those abused girls and women.
This is terrible.
I know. He's dead now. He died in 2018 of cancer, aged 92.
Oh, God.
In recent years, there have been so many stories of child abuse and rape and other forms of cruelty and subjugation. In July 2020, the New Zealand Police launched Operation Minneapolis, which was an investigation into child abuse at Gloriavale after they got information about the alleged abuse of an 11-year-old boy.
Oh, no.
Then in 2020, in September, a 20-year-old man was charged with an indecent act on 3 boys between the ages of 12 and 16, but he was not convicted because he pled guilty. And apparently the offences occurred when he was a teenager. So he was just doing what had happened to him. So the court felt that he was a low-risk re-offender. So they kind of took mercy on this guy. 2021, a former Gloriavale man pleaded guilty to 8 charges of indecently assaulting girls, 2 charges of indecently assaulting a boy, 1 count of sexual violation. That same month, police also investigated allegations of physical and sexual abuse at Gloriavale's school, with police saying that at least 60 people had been involved in harmful sexual behaviour. This is horrible. And look, I could go on and on about all the different charges of sexual contact with children and abuse, but it's just gross.
Yeah. Tell me some good news, Michelle.
Well, some of them ended up in prison. A lot didn't. But the good news is it does seem that Gloriavale is starting to unravel.
Good.
And this is partly because of the employment court ruling that people in Gloriavale, including children, are working under slave-like conditions. The Ministry of Education and other agencies had to step in, and it's being investigated. They're realising that safety checks failed or maybe didn't even happen. I guess Gloriavale has gone from being just this kind of quirky religious group to being a fucking cult. Like, people are seeing it for what it is, because it was a national scandal in New Zealand. And yet inside the cult, the leaders are just saying the outside world's attacking us. You know, it's persecution and we must, fight and stand firm. So this whole kind of cycle of isolation and propaganda, it's spinning around, But there have been inquiries, there have been legal decisions, there have been official reviews, and the government has stepped in. There have been child labour investigations, there have been financial audits, hit them where it hurts in the hip pocket. And there are even more moves to dissolve Gloriavale's charitable status, because forcing kids to work and for women to stay silent does not quite meet the legal definition of a charity. But the thing is, there are still people in there. There are still children growing up in that system, but there are these documentaries being made. The world knows about Gloriavale, but it's still going on. There's not really any resolution. And in fact, I saw footage of when some of the escapees of this cult were involved in court proceedings, and they'd bust in a load of Gloriavale congregation who was saying, we love it. We love where we live. We're not subjugated. We do it willingly.
He said, she said style kind of, refuting of the allegations.
Yeah, it's like, look at us. We love where we live. Stop persecuting us.
Don't ruin our lifestyle. You know, Michelle, it's a real shame that the only way of getting this cult to unravel, as you say, is through the financial and employment law side of things, rather than the abuse and the violation of human rights that's so clearly happening within the walls of the cult, let's call it.
Yeah, and really, like, you want to be a dude if you're going to be in that cult. Because women...
Well, that's what you said earlier.
Yeah, women just have a shocking time there. And yet, if you're born into the cult...
it's just people.
Well, but if you're born into that cult and you don't know anything else, like...
It's normal. A bit like, you know, the whole way through you were telling me this story, apart from all the horror, I was thinking, our society as it stands, we don't question it. We think we know right from wrong. We think we know what's best for us. We do have a certain amount of personal freedom, which I think is lacking in this particular cult and in some other societies around the globe. But is it right? Is it the right way? For me, it's personal freedoms, and it's freedom of speech, and it's freedom, you know, not hate speech, though, I must point that out, but it's freedom to be autonomous is my big thing. And having to be told that this is your life and this is because you've been born a particular, you know, biologically a woman or whatever, you have to then go and co-create and always have sex when it's required of you. It's not right for me. It doesn't feel right. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way, apart from all those Gloriavale citizens.
But we live in a society that is constructed, and there are boundaries that have been put in place, often through Christian teachings, thou shalt not kill, you know, all of that kind of thing. I listened to a podcast, because there are other podcasts out there. It was called Lucky Boy. It was the #1 podcast on the Apple charts a few weeks back. And it's horrible. It's about a guy who, when he was, I think, 14, was chosen by his female PE teacher or science teacher as, I mean, he was groomed, essentially.
Yeah.
But this was in the 80s, and he was considered the lucky boy because the hot teacher was, you know, banging him, basically. And all these years later, he's finally realized this is why he can't have a relationship. This is why he's fucked up. He's so mentally traumatized by what he thought at the time seemed to be this incredible experience. But he was a child and groomed by a woman who was in a position of authority. But what you were saying just now reminded me of a particular part of this podcast series that I found absolutely fucking disturbing. And they said he wasn't taken seriously. And even now people think, oh, come on, you're a 14-year-old boy having the time of your life with an older hot teacher. But to put it into context, at the time, it wasn't considered sexual abuse the way it is now. And they played this piece of radio footage from the early 80s as a way to see how far we've come in thinking about child rights. There was a society called Rights for Pedophiles or something. They had this group was given a platform in society to talk about why the age of consent for children should be lowered to 4.
What the
It's fucking disturbing. But she said, I'm playing you this because this was a discussion in our society in the 80s. And this abuse of this guy happened at a time when groups like this were given airtime.
Holy hell.
It's fucked up. And I really recommend anybody who wants to listen to this podcast, I will link to it in the Patreon. But it is disturbing.
the stomach for it.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
really
It
awful.
sounds rough. A bit like this week's episode, Michelle. I do apologize to all of you lovely eavesdroppers. I know some of you can take it. Just for me, I think it is always good to shine a light on these things, institutional abuse and cults under our noses, parading as religions. I think it's interesting to look into it. Obviously, knowledge is power, and that's what those people in those cults and in those schools are lacking, power.
Yes. But I tell you what I'm lacking.
What?
A drink.
Oh.
I'm thirsty.
Is it the wine o'clock now, Michelle, for you?
It is wine o'clock. I've had enough. I need to drown my sorrows from all of this horror.
Okay.
But thank you very much for your story.
Pleasure.
I'll drink that away and
drink the pain away, everybody. Yep. In the meantime, all we can do is say these 3 words.
Wherever you are,
whatever you do,
just keep
eavesdropping.
Dropping.
Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping. Dropping. Eavesdropping. Dropping. Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping.
Dropping. Dropping.
Eavesdropping. Eavesdropping all day long. Eavesdropping, this is a song.
Drop it like it's hot.
Did you know that foreign investors are quietly funding lawsuits in American courts through a practice called third-party litigation funding? Shadowy overseas funders are paying to sue American companies in our courts, and they don't pay a dime in U.S. taxes if there is an award or settlement. They profit tax-free from our legal system, while U.S. companies are tied up in court, and American families pay the price, to the tune of $5,000 a year. But there is a solution. A new proposal before Congress would close this loophole and ensure these foreign investors pay taxes, just like the actual plaintiffs have to. It's a common-sense move that discourages frivolous and abusive lawsuits and redirects resources back into American jobs, innovation, and growth. Only President Trump and congressional Republicans can deliver this win for America and hold these foreign investors accountable. Contact your lawmakers today and demand they take a stand to end foreign-funded litigation abuse.